Now, it seems that it can be proved by certain reasons that human souls cannot remain after the body. For if human souls are multiplied according to the multiplication of bodies, as has been shown above, then when the bodies are destroyed, the souls cannot remain in their multitude. Hence it is necessary to follow the second of the two, either that the human soul ceases to be altogether, or that only one remains. This seems to be according to the opinion of those who hold that only that which is one in all men is incorruptible, whether this is only the active intellect, as Alexander says, or with an agent also possible, as Averroes says. Further, the formal reason is the cause of diversity according to species. But if many souls remain after the corruption of bodies, they must be different. For just as what is one in substance is the same, so are things that are many in substance different. Now there can be no difference in the souls remaining after the body, except a formal one. For they are not composed of matter and form, as was proved above of every intellectual substance. It remains then that they are different according to species. But it is not through the corruption of the body that souls are changed to another species. For everything that is changed from species to species is corrupted. It remains then that even before they were separated from their bodies, they were different in species. But the compounds are divided into species according to their form. Therefore the individuals of men were different according to their species. That is inappropriate. Therefore it seems impossible that many human souls should remain behind their bodies. Still, it seems to be absolutely impossible, according to those who posit the eternity of the world, to posit that human souls remain in their multitude after the death of the body. For if the world is from eternity, movement was from eternity. Therefore generation is also eternal. But if generation is eternal, countless men have died before us. If, therefore, the souls of the dead remain after death in their multitude, it must be said that there are now infinite souls in the act of men who have died before. But this is impossible, for infinity cannot actually exist in nature. It therefore remains, if the world is eternal, that not many souls remain after death again. What comes to a person and departs from him apart from his own corruption comes to him accidentally. For this is the definition of an accident. If, therefore, the soul is not corrupted by leaving the body, it will follow that the soul is accidentally united to the body. Therefore man is a being by accident, who is composed of soul and body. And it will further follow that there is no human species, for the white man is not a species. Further, it is impossible for there to be any substance without some operation, but all the activity of the soul ends with the body. This is evident by induction, for the nutritive virtues of the soul work through the bodily qualities, and through the bodily instrument, and in the body itself, which is perfected by the soul, which is nourished and increased, and from which the seed is dropped for generation. All the operations of the powers which belong to the sensitive soul are completed by the bodily organs, and some of them are completed with some bodily change, such as are called the passions of the soul, such as love, joy, and the like. But to understand that even if the operation is not exercised by any bodily organ, yet its objects are phantasms which are related to it as colors are to sight. Whence, as sight cannot see without colors, so the intellectual soul cannot understand without phantasms. The soul also needs, in order to understand the phantasms, by the virtues which prepare them so that they may become intelligible in action, namely by the power of thought and memory. Hence Aristotle also says that by no means does the soul understand without phantasm, and that he understands nothing without the passive intellect, which he calls the thinking power, which is corruptible. And for this reason he says in De Anima 1, that man's understanding is corrupted by a kind of interior corruption, that is, by phantasm or a passive intellect. And in chapter 3 of the Soul, it is said that we do not remember after death what we knew in life. It is therefore clear that no activity of the soul can remain after death. Therefore, its substance does not remain, since no substance can exist without operation. Now these reasons, because they conclude falsely, as has been shown from the preceding, we must try to solve them. And in the first place, it must be known that whatever things must be joined and proportioned to each other, they simultaneously receive multitude or unity, each from its own cause. Therefore, if the existence of one depends on another, its unity or multiplication also depends on that. Otherwise, from another external cause. Therefore, form and matter must always be proportionate to each other, and as if naturally co-opted, because the proper act takes place in the proper matter. Hence it is always necessary that matter and form succeed each other in multitude and unity. Therefore, if the existence of form depends on matter, its multiplication depends on matter, and likewise unity. But if not, it will indeed be necessary to multiply the form according to the multiplication of the matter, that is, together with the matter and its proportion, but not in such a way that the unity or multitude of the form itself depends on the matter. Now it has been shown that the human soul is a form according to its being, not dependent on matter. Hence it follows that souls are indeed multiplied in proportion as bodies are multiplied. But the multiplication of bodies will not be the cause of the multiplication of souls, and therefore it is not necessary that, when bodies are destroyed, the plurality of souls should cease, as the first reason concluded. From this, the answer to the second reason is also easy to understand. For not every diversity of forms causes diversity according to species, but only that which is according to formal principles or according to a different aspect of the form. For it is clear that the essence of the form of this fire is different from that of that, and yet there is neither another fire nor another form according to species. The multitude of souls separated from their bodies indeed results from a diversity of forms according to their substance, because the substance of this soul is different from that of that soul. However, this diversity does not proceed from the diversity of the essential principles of the soul itself, nor is it according to a different nature of the soul, but it is according to a different adjustment of souls to bodies. For this soul is commensurate with this body, and not with that, but that with others, and so with all things. And such commensurations remain in souls even when they perish in bodies, just as their substances themselves remain, as if they did not depend on bodies in their being. For souls are, according to their substance, the forms of bodies. Otherwise they would be accidentally united to the body, and thus the soul and body would not become one by themselves, but one by accident. But insofar as there are forms, they must be proportionate to the bodies. From this it is clear that the different adjustments themselves remain in separate souls, and consequently plurality. They must be commensurate with the bodies. From this it is clear that the different adjustments themselves remain in separate souls, and consequently plurality. They must be commensurate with the bodies. From this it is clear that the different adjustments themselves remain in separate souls, and consequently plurality. But on the occasion of the introduction of the third reason, some, positing the eternity of the world, fell into diverse foreign opinions. For some have simply conceded the conclusion, saying that human souls perish together with their bodies. Others, however, have said that of all souls, there remains something separate which is common to all, namely the active intellect, according to some, or with it a possible understanding, according to others. Others, however, held that the souls in their multitude remain after the bodies, but lest they should be forced to posit an infinity of souls, they said that the same souls are united to different bodies after a certain time. And this was the opinion of the Platonists, which will be discussed below. Some, however, avoiding all the aforesaid, said that it was not improbable that separate souls should actually exist as infinite. For being actually infinite in those things which have no order to one another, it is to be infinite by accident, which they do not consider inappropriate to posit. And this is the position of Avicenna and Algazel. But what Aristotle felt about these things is not expressly found by him, when, however, he expressly posits the eternity of the world. However, the last of the aforesaid opinions is not inconsistent with the principles laid down by him. For in 3 Physics, and in the first De Caelo, he proves that there is not actually infinity in natural bodies, but not in immaterial substances. It is certain, however, that professors of the Catholic faith, who do not posit the eternity of the world, suffer no difficulty in this regard. Nor is it necessary that if the soul remains in the destroyed body, that it was accidentally united to it, as the 4th reason concluded. For what happens is described, that which can be present and absent apart from the corruption of the subject composed of matter and form. But if it is referred to the principles of the compound subject, the truth is not found, for it is agreed that the first matter is innate and incorruptible, as Aristotle proves in Physics 1. Hence, when the form withdraws, it remains in its essence. However, the form was not accidentally united to it, but essentially, for it was united to it according to its one being. Similarly, the soul is united to the body according to its one being, as was shown above. Hence, although it remains behind the body, it is substantially united to it, not accidentally. But the first matter does not actually remain after the form except according to the act of another form. But what the 5th reason proposed, that no activity can remain in the soul if it is separated from the body, we say is false. For those activities remain which are not exercised by the organs. But understanding and willing are of this kind. But those things which are exercised by the bodily organs, such as the operations of the nutritive and sensitive powers, do not remain. It must be known, however, that the soul separated from the body and united to the body understands in another way, just as it is in another way. For each thing acts according to this, according to what it is. The existence of the human soul, while it is united to the body, even if it is absolute and not dependent on the body, is nevertheless a certain layer of it and the receiving subject itself. Hence, and consequently, its proper operation, which is to understand, although it does not depend on the body as if exercised through a corporeal organ, nevertheless has an object in the body, that is, the phantasm. Hence, as long as the soul is in the body, it cannot understand without phantasms, nor can it even remember except through the power of thought and memory, by which phantasms are prepared, as is clear from what has been said. And for this reason, understanding, as far as this method is concerned, and recollection in the same way, is destroyed by the destroyed body. But the existence of a separate soul is itself without a body. Hence his operation, which is to understand, will not be fulfilled by reference to the existence of some objects in corporeal organs, which are phantasms, but he will understand by himself, in the manner of substances which are totally separated from bodies according to their being, of which we will speak below. From whom also, as if from superiors, he will be able to receive a richer influence in order to understand more perfectly. A sign of this also appears in young men, For the soul, when it is hindered from preoccupation with its own body, is rendered more capable of understanding higher things, whence also the power of self-control, which withdraws the soul from bodily pleasures, makes men particularly apt to understand. Even when men are asleep, when they do not use their bodily senses and there is no disturbance of the humors or impeding fumes, they perceive things about the future, from the impression of their superiors, which exceed the mode of human reasoning. And this happens much more in those who suffer syncopation and ecstasy. The greater is the withdrawal from the bodily senses, nor did this happen undeservedly. Because, as was shown above, when the human soul is on the border of bodies and incorporeal substances, existing as it were on the horizon of eternity and time, receding from the lowest, it approaches the highest. Hence, when it is completely separated from the body, it will be completely assimilated to the separate substances as far as the mode of understanding is concerned, and will receive their influence abundantly. When, as was shown above, the human soul, on the border of bodies and incorporeal substances, as if existing on the horizon of eternity and time, receding from the lowest, approaches the highest. Hence, when it is completely separated from the body, it will be completely assimilated to the separate substances as far as the mode of understanding is concerned, and will receive their influence abundantly. When, as was shown above, the human soul on the border of bodies and incorporeal substances, as if existing on the horizon of eternity and time, receding from the lowest, approaches the highest. Hence, when it is completely separated from the body, it will be completely assimilated to the separate substances as far as the mode of understanding is concerned, and will receive their influence abundantly. Thus, therefore, even if our understanding according to the mode of present life is corrupted by a corrupt body, yet another higher mode of understanding will succeed. Now, to remember, since it is an act through the bodily organ of the army, as in the book De Memoria et Reminiscentia, Aristotle proves that it will not be possible for the soul to remain after the body unless recollection is equivocally taken for the intelligence of what one knows before. How much more must the separated soul be present, even to what it knows in life, when intelligible species are indelibly received in the possible intellect, as was shown above. Regarding other activities of the soul, such as loving, rejoicing, and the like, equivocation must be avoided, for sometimes they are taken to be the passions of the soul, and so are the sensible acts of the appetite, according to the concupiscible or irascible, with some bodily change, and thus they cannot remain in the soul after death, as Aristotle proves in his book On the Soul. But they are sometimes taken for a simple act of the will, which is without passion. Hence Aristotle says in Ethics 7 that God delights in one simple operation, and in 10 that in the contemplation of wisdom there is an admirable delight, and in 8 the love of friendship from love, which is passion, distinguishes. But since the will is a power not using an organ, just as neither is the intellect, it is clear that such things, inasmuch as they are acts of the will, must remain in a separate soul. Therefore it cannot be concluded from the aforesaid reasons that the soul of man is mortal.